I didn't mean to hear her say it, but when she whispered, "You always show up exactly when I need someone," her voice was soft enough that it shouldn't have reached me, and clear enough that it stayed in my head long after I stepped back into the hallway. That wasn't the beginning, though. The beginning was quieter, almost nothing. A Thursday evening, the hallway too still, the lights humming overhead like they were tired of staying awake. I'd gone out to take the trash down. That's it. Nothing romantic, nothing planned. Just me in an old t-shirt and slippers, half asleep. And then her door opened at the same time mine did, and suddenly she was there again. Elena, mid-40s, calm voice, eyes that never said the same thing twice. She always looked like she'd come straight from a long conversation with herself. "Evening," she said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. That small gesture felt careful, like she wasn't just fixing her hair, she was steadying herself. "Hey," I answered too quickly. Too awake now. We started walking toward the elevator together, both carrying our trash bags. It was stupid, but I slowed my steps to match hers. She noticed. I could tell by the way her shoulders tightened for half a second, then relaxed like she decided not to comment. She talked first. "You always come out around this time," she said. "Coincidence?" I shrugged. "Or maybe you're the one showing up when I do." She laughed, quiet, short, but real. She didn't laugh much. Not the kind that came from her chest anyway. "You're what?" 24, she asked. 26, I corrected. "And you're?" She looked at me, a little surprised I even asked. Most people just assume they shouldn't. 45. She said it simply, but something flickered behind her eyes, something like caution squeezed into a single blink. The elevator doors opened. We stepped in. The air between us felt too still again. Not uncomfortable, exactly, not comfortable either. Just aware. She kept talking, maybe to fill the air, maybe because silence with me didn't feel empty. "It's strange living next to someone," she said. "You hear nothing, and then suddenly you hear everything. Footsteps, doors, voices. It's like accidental intimacy." "Is that a complaint?" I asked. "No," she said almost instantly. Then softer, "Not with you." Her fingers tightened slightly around the trash bag. Micro movement barely there, but I saw it. The elevator reached the ground floor. We walked out together, but she slowed down as we neared the dumpsters, as if she wanted the walk to stretch a little longer. So did I. We tossed the bags, turned to go back inside. And then, just as we reached the building door, she spoke again, voice low. "I noticed things about you," she said. My hand froze on the door handle. "Like what?" She hesitated, looked away, looked back. That conflict, whatever it was, tightened her jaw for a moment, then softened. "You walk quietly," she said finally, "but you always arrive when the hallway feels lonely." That wasn't what she wanted to say. I knew it, and she knew I knew it. When we reached our floor, she stopped at her door and turned to me. Not smiling, not frowning, just holding something in her expression I hadn't seen before. Something between invitation and apology. "Thank you for walking with me," she said. "It was just trash," I replied, though it wasn't. "No," she said, almost whispering. "It wasn't just." She pushed her door open, paused, and then, barely audible, she said the line that changed everything. "You always show up exactly when I need someone." I didn't know what to say. She didn't wait for me to try. The door closed. Click. And then, my phone buzzed in my pocket with a message that made my heartbeat stutter. The hallway felt smaller somehow, like the walls had leaned in just to listen. I stayed where I was, leaning against the cool metal of the radiator, my phone buzzing silently in my hand. I shouldn't have waited. I knew that, but the curiosity, the need to see her again, made my legs betray me. When Elena's door opened, she didn't step out. She just leaned against the frame, arms crossed, as if the weight of years rested there. The light from her apartment spilled over her, soft and golden, brushing the tired lines at the edges of her eyes. "I didn't expect you to actually stay," she said. Her voice had that unpolished edge, careful, yet honest. "I didn't know what else to do," I admitted. I didn't say it aloud, but my heart was already tangled in a way that made even breathing feel dangerous. She looked down, hesitating. A silence stretched between us, but it wasn't empty. It carried everything we weren't saying. "I divorced 5 years ago," she finally whispered. 2 kids. He left when my youngest was just a toddler." She laughed softly, the sound brittle but not bitter. "Sometimes I wonder if I've gotten any better at being me." or if I'm just surviving. I swallowed hard. It was hard not to stare at her, to memorize the way her fingers absent-mindedly traced the edge of the doorframe. I wanted to tell her that she seemed alive in a way most people her age rarely let themselves be, but the words stuck somewhere behind my throat. I lost someone too, I said finally. Not the whole story. Not how the last relationship had ended quietly, painfully, leaving me restless and wary. A year ago. It's nothing compared to your story, I guess. She glanced at me then, really looked, and I caught that flicker, the momentary slip where she wasn't guarding, wasn't measuring. A vulnerability so rare it made my chest tighten. Maybe that's why. You feel like you show up when I need someone, she said, almost to herself. But I heard it. The age gap hung between us, heavy and silent. 20 years, maybe more. Too obvious to ignore, yet somehow irrelevant in the charged pause that had settled over the hallway. There was also the subtle risk, the social friction that whispered we shouldn't be here. Neighbors, acquaintances, lives not built for entanglement. But the magnetic pull between us didn't care. I stepped a fraction closer, careful not to cross a line we hadn't defined. She didn't move away. Instead, her hand brushed mine, a collision so brief it could have been accidental. I wanted to freeze time, to let that fleeting contact linger forever. I remember, that first day we met, she said softly, eyes tracing the floor like she feared the words would escape too quickly. You helped me carry groceries. I don't know why it mattered so much, but it did. I smiled, quietly, thinking about it. The awkward plastic bags, her apologetic laugh when one of them tore, the way she had glared at me with mock irritation that barely concealed her amusement. That memory felt like an anchor in the storm of new feelings crashing around us. The tension between us thickened, unspoken and deliberate. I could feel her breath shift as our hands lingered close, and I wondered how long we could stay in that fragile space before the world outside forced its rules on us. Then, as if testing the silence, she shifted slightly and our fingers brushed again, just enough to spark a jolt neither of us could deny. A doorbell rang somewhere in the building, sudden and jarring, but for a moment, I didn't care. All I knew was that she was there, and I wasn't ready to let the moment end. I froze the moment I heard the knock on her door. Not the gentle kind, but firm, demanding attention. My heart hammered like it knew what was coming before I did. Just a second. Elena called, her voice strained, tight, like a violin string pulled too far. I felt my chest tighten. Whoever it was, I wasn't sure if I wanted to meet them, or if I even should. The door swung open a crack. A man's voice floated through. Elena? I thought I heard. She cut him off with a sharp, polite laugh. I'm Fine. Just the trash. Everything's fine. I stepped back, trying not to be noticed. I wasn't supposed to be here. The age gap, the closeness, the delicate balance. We'd been teetering on it for weeks, and now it felt like the first real threat had arrived. Once he left, slamming the door behind him, she sagged against the frame, jaw tight. Her hand brushed my arm. Not fully touching, but close enough to remind me she existed in the same space, breathing, alive, dangerously real. I hate that he comes over at the wrong time, she muttered. He doesn't understand anything. I'm glad it's just me then, I said, forcing my voice casual, but my stomach knotted. She glanced at me, then down at her hands. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. Not scolding, not angry, conflicted. That word hung heavy in the air, shouldn't. I wanted to tell her I didn't care. That every moment here, every brush of our hands, every quiet laugh or pause between words had made me care too much to step away. But I didn't. I stayed silent, letting her fight her own battle with the invisible line. And then, just like that, the air shifted. She leaned closer, and for half a heartbeat, it felt like we might cross it anyway. Lips so near I could feel her breath. I wanted her, and yet I flinched. Fear, guilt, the rules of the world outside, it all pressed down on me. She pulled back instantly, a flicker of surprise, then regret, passing over her features. She began, then stopped. I didn't speak either. Words felt dangerous now, too revealing. We stayed like that, so close the tension made the hallway shrink around us. My fingers twitched, reaching for her, but I stopped short. The risk was delicious and terrifying. I shouldn't do this, she whispered finally. And it was almost a plea, almost a warning, almost a confession. I wanted to argue, to say neither of us can help this. But my throat closed. Instead, I swallowed and let the silence do the talking, letting the weight of our proximity say what words couldn't. A sudden noise startled us both. A dog barking somewhere down the hall, maybe a neighbor's late-night argument. It shattered the bubble, reminded us of the rules of the lives we couldn't disrupt. She stepped back, closed her door slowly, leaving just a sliver open. We didn't speak again, but the tension lingered like a pulse. My heartbeat didn't slow. My eyes kept finding that small opening, half hoping, half dreading, that she'd step out again. And in that quiet aftermath, I realized something dangerous. The closer I tried to pull away, the more impossible it was to resist her. The air in the hallway felt thick, almost suffocating. I had left my apartment hours ago, telling myself I just needed fresh air, but my steps led me inevitably back toward her door. I couldn't stop thinking about her, the way her hand had brushed mine, the way her eyes had searched mine and found something she didn't want to admit. I shouldn't have come. Every rational part of me screamed that this was reckless. Too old, too complicated, too fragile. But desire doesn't ask permission. When I reached her door, it was ajar. A soft light spilled into the hallway. She was there, leaning against the wall. Phone pressed her ear, voice low. "I just don't know if it's a good idea," she said, but I could hear the tremor beneath her words. Not fear, not exactly. Something else. Hesitation, yearning, something she hadn't dared to name. I cleared my throat. She jumped, eyes widening, then softened immediately when she saw it was me. "You're still here?" she asked, voice caught between annoyance and relief. I couldn't stay away, I admitted, and I realized in that moment that it wasn't a confession I could hide. Not from her, not from myself. Her gaze dropped to my chest, then back to my eyes, sharp and assessing. "You know this is complicated," she said. The weight of the years between us pressed into the words, heavy and real. "I know," I said, voice quieter than I intended. "But I can't pretend I don't care." Her lips parted slightly, a silent gasp she couldn't or wouldn't voice. And then something shifted. Her hand found mine again, this time gripping tighter. Not tentative, not accidental. "I shouldn't," she whispered. "I shouldn't let this happen." "Let what happen?" I asked, my own voice trembling just slightly. "I don't care about rules or ages or whatever else. I just know I don't want to pretend we're strangers." She laughed softly, almost bitterly, and the sound broke something open inside me. "You don't understand. People will talk. I've lived long enough to know how quickly things can unravel." "Let them," I said, stepping closer. I could feel her body responding to mine, without permission, without intention. Her pulse, fast beneath the thin fabric of her sweater, told me more than words ever could. A flash of jealousy crossed her face suddenly. She glanced down the hall, as if someone might appear out of nowhere. And maybe I understood then, more than ever, how dangerous this was. Not because of rules, but because desire and fear were tangled so tightly that one wrong move could undo us. "I don't want this to ruin anything," she said, voice trembling, lips almost smiling. "But you make it impossible to stay away." Her words were a confession, a challenge, a surrender all at once. My heart raced. I wanted to pull her into me, to close the space between us that had become unbearable. But fear and respect held me back, even as my hands itched to touch her face, her hair, the line of her jaw. She lifted her eyes, and in that gaze, so full of longing, hesitation, and something dangerously tender, I realized whatever happened next, we had crossed a line. And then, just as I was about to reach for her, just as the tension hung between us like a storm about to break, her phone buzzed loudly, shattering the moment. She jumped, startled, breaking the spell. My hand froze midair. The world outside intruded, harsh and unwelcome, leaving us suspended on the edge of something neither of us could ignore. We both knew it was only a matter of seconds before we either fell or stepped back forever. I didn't expect to see him. Not here. Not now. The moment Elena opened her door the next morning, the man from the hallway yesterday, the one I'd assumed was just a neighbor, stood there, leaning casually, a smug smile playing at the corner of his mouth. My stomach dropped. "Elena," he said, voice smooth. I didn't expect company. His eyes flicked to me, sharp, assessing, like he'd been waiting to measure the threat. She stiffened instantly. Her hand pressed lightly against her chest, and I could see the tension in her shoulders. "We were just mourning, Dan," she said quickly, redirecting her words to me, but it didn't feel protective. It felt guilty. I understood immediately. He was her brother-in-law, or maybe a friend of her late husband. Something close enough that she hadn't told me. Something that made my presence complicated, forbidden. He tilted his head at me, casually, almost mockingly. "So, this is the neighbor you've been spending time with?" Elena's eyes darted between us. "Hey, he's just helping me, carrying things, talking, neighborly stuff." "Neighborly," he repeated slowly, as though tasting the word and finding it lacking. Then he stepped closer, just slightly, but enough to invade the fragile bubble I'd existed in with her. "You're married to the past, Elena. Don't get caught in something reckless." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he had no right, that I wasn't trying to ruin anything, that Elena and I, whatever this was ours alone. But words tangled in my throat. Instead, I clenched my fists, silent, aware that even my stillness spoke louder than I intended. Elena looked down, jaw tight. "I didn't. He doesn't understand," she whispered to me, not to him. Her hand brushed my arm, an almost invisible touch, but it felt like an anchor, a promise we hadn't spoken yet. He smirked, clearly noticing the small gesture. "Careful," he said lightly. "I might start thinking you've been lying." Her eyes flared. "I haven't," she said, voice sharp. But then her gaze softened almost immediately, like she was scolding herself. "I just didn't want you to know yet." I felt a pang in my chest, sharp and twisting. Lying? Or omission? Either way, trust felt fragile, fraying at the edges. He left after a tense minute, but the damage lingered. Elena shut the door slowly, leaning against it with her head down. I could see the hesitation in her movements, the quiet weight pressing on her shoulders. "I'm sorry," she whispered finally, voice trembling. "I should have told you. I didn't mean to complicate things." "You didn't tell me," I said quietly, trying to steady my racing heart. "But that doesn't change this." I gestured vaguely between us. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked up then, eyes brimming with something I couldn't name. Fear, relief, longing, regret all at once. Her fingers brushed mine again, and this time it wasn't accidental. I wanted to close the distance, to erase the uncertainty, to make her mine in a way that left no room for interference. But the risk was real now. Not just in the hallway, not just in the quiet moments we were exposed. Vulnerable. And that vulnerability made the pull between us nearly unbearable. I leaned closer. She met me halfway with a breathless glance. The world outside had shifted. Nothing felt safe anymore. But neither of us wanted to step back. The hallway was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your chest and forces every thought forward. Elena's door was closed, but I could hear her breathing through the thin wood. I had no right to be here, yet every step I took toward her felt inevitable. I knocked softly. Nothing. Knocked again. A small click, and the door opened just a crack. She was there, leaning against the frame, eyes wide but wary. She began, then stopped. I stepped in, careful not to crowd her. "Elena," I said, voice low, "I don't care about the rules. I don't care about the past. I need you to know what I feel." Her lips parted, trembling. "You know I can't. You can." I interrupted, my hands brushing against hers. Not holding, just touching like proof we were real. "You can because it's here. Between us. Don't let fear, don't let him change that." Her eyes glistened. The vulnerability there made me want to fold her into my arms, to promise her everything she didn't believe she deserved. But she flinched slightly, hesitation still alive in her movements. "I've spent years," she whispered, "years telling myself I wasn't allowed, that happiness was for someone else, that I had to survive quietly." I cupped her face gently, thumb brushing the line of her jaw. "You're allowed. You're allowed to feel, to want, to choose." Her eyes searched mine, like she was looking for the truth in my soul. And maybe she found it there, raw and honest, waiting. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice breaking. "I don't want to ruin everything." I shook my head. "You won't. Not with me. We'll figure it out. Messy or not, we'll figure it out together." Her hand found mine fully this time. fingers lacing. That simple contact spoke louder than words, louder than the years we'd try to contain ourselves. I think I've been waiting for this, she said softly. Waiting for someone who sees me. All of me. And you do. My chest tightened. Every fear, every hesitation, every external complication faded in that moment. She was here. I was here. And it was enough. We leaned toward each other slowly, neither of us rushing, savoring the fragile tension that had been building for weeks. I could feel her breath, could see the tiny quiver of anticipation, the unspoken question. Will we dare? The hallway seemed to hold its breath with us. The lights flickered softly, shadows dancing across the walls, mirroring the uncertainty and the hope in her eyes. Then, just before our lips could meet, the phone on her nightstand buzzed loudly. A harsh, abrupt reminder that the world outside existed. We paused, foreheads nearly touching, fingers still entwined, eyes locked. She started, then swallowed. I know, I whispered. We'll face it, together. Her lips trembled, hovering near mine. The choice had been made, unspoken but clear. We weren't stepping back. We weren't pretending. But what happened next, the first kiss, the step forward, the decision to face the world, remained suspended in the air between us, like a promise waiting to be claimed. For now, all that mattered was that we had found each other, and somehow that was enough. The morning light spilled through her apartment window, soft and forgiving, painting everything gold. Elena sat on the couch, mug in hand, and for a moment I just watched her, the way the sunlight kissed the strands of hair around her face, the quiet rhythm of her breathing, the small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at her lips. We hadn't rushed anything after that night. No grand declarations to the world, no loud confessions. Just the small, careful moments that made us feel like ourselves again, like we could exist together without shattering everything around us. I made too much coffee, she said, looking up, and her eyes met mine. There was laughter in them now, gentle and real. You're forgiven, I replied, sliding onto the couch beside her. My hand found hers instinctively, and this time she didn't flinch. She squeezed my fingers lightly. It was messy, of course. We had to navigate whispers in the hallway, glances from neighbors, the occasional awkward encounter with someone who knew a little too much. But we did it together, and slowly, the tension that had made every stolen look electric softened into something steady, something that felt like home. She told me stories about her children, her fears, the things she hadn't shared with anyone for years. I told her mine, the mistakes, the heartbreak, the restless nights spent wondering if anyone could see me for who I truly was. And in the telling, in the listening, we healed each other in ways we hadn't even realized we needed. One afternoon, I found her on the balcony, leaning against the railing, staring at the city skyline. I joined her quietly, and we stood there in silence. No words were needed. The wind caught her hair, and I brushed it gently back behind her ear. A simple touch, yet it carried the weight of all the nights we had lingered near each other, the whispered confessions, the suspended moments just before a decision. You're staying? She asked, almost as if she needed my answer aloud. Always, I said softly. She laughed, a sound that made my chest ache with warmth, and turned to me. I think I was afraid of this, afraid it would be too much, that it would ruin me. Or me, I said. Her hand found mine again, fingers intertwining perfectly. But it didn't, she said. And in that moment, I believed it. Everything we had feared, the gossip, the age, the past, it didn't matter. We had chosen each other, and that choice was enough. We watched the sun climb higher, the city waking around us. And for the first time, I felt certain that the slow, messy, human path we had taken was the one we were meant to walk. The story didn't end with fireworks or perfection. It ended with us, flawed, human, together. Every hesitation, every stolen glance, every heartbeat in that long hallway had led to this quiet certainty. And as we leaned into each other, the world outside fading for just a moment, I realized that sometimes love isn't about rushing. It's about choosing over and over, even when the path is messy. If you felt the tension, the longing, and the slow burn romance of this story, hit like and subscribe for more stories like this. Comment below, what kind of love story do you want to see next?